Sermon in a sentence. Mary told the servants to obey Jesus, even though Jesus said no. So let's act in faith by obeying. John chapter 2, verse 5. You notice that sermon on the sentence has this one word twice. Obey Jesus, obeying, right? It's all about obeying. Jesus went to the authority. Jesus do this. And then she went to the servants. Do what he says. In this story of John chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, who are we? I would hope that we would be Mary. That's what I'm presenting in the last 2 weeks. Let's be more like Mary by stepping out in faith. But we're also the servants here. We're the people who are told to listen and obey. Let's listen and obey. Let's do it. This is not a worldwide problem. It's not a humanity problem. It definitely is a Western problem. And the Western problem is this. We don't want to be servants. We want to be in charge. It saturates our culture. Oh, little Bobby, you can grow up to be president of the United States, we say. Oh, honey, you can grow up to be anything. Be the general secretary of the UN. When's the last time you encouraged a child to grow up to be a butler? When's the last time you praised a child for wanting to be a waitress? Because we value being in charge instead of serving. And here's the shocker, my friends. That is contrary to everything in Scripture. Jesus tells us to be servants. He calls us to slavery, not being in charge. And that cuts us deep. And that infects our entire relationship with Jesus and our relationship with one another. Because we want to be in charge. The last thing we want is to submit. No. Weaklings submit. Don't you submit to the bully on the playground. You stand up for yourself. Don't you submit to the teacher that gives you a failing grade. I'll go in and I'll embarrass that teacher to death and they will give you a better grade. We don't value submitting, and yet submitting is the Christian characteristic. The 11 guys turned the Roman Empire upside down by submitting. Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, not in the elite, but in the slaves. And when they started killing people for believing, more people signed up. We are called to a lifestyle of service, of surrender. We are the servants. And so if we would only grasp what Mary said. Half my family is Catholic, Roman Catholic. And I don't have a problem with the Catholics. In fact, I had a conversation with the Knights of Columbus that was so well he thought I was a Knight of Columbus. And I had to tell him, no, I'm a Baptist. It really confused him. But half my family is Catholic. And the part in the Catholic Church that really bothers me is the cult of Mary. It's an organization within an organization within an organization. The last 15, 20 popes have all belonged to the cult of Mary. And this is an idea where Mary is a co-redeemer with Jesus. And everything about that sentence offends me as a follower of Jesus. And so when I'm talking to my Catholic brothers and sisters, whom I love, I like to point them to Mary's last words. Because Mary's last words, we read in verse 5. Whatever he says, do it. You want to be a follower of Mary, then listen to the last thing she said. She pointed to Jesus and said, whatever he says, do it. You focus in on that and you'll lose interest in Mary. Whatever he says, do it. Those are words to the servants. If we don't have any ego in this, then we can receive the instructions from the Lord and say, sir, yes, sir. We know Jesus has our best interests at heart. We know his word is written as a love letter to you and I. He's only looking out for us. He tells us prohibitions because they lead to self-destruction. Don't do these things because they will destroy you. Do these things because they will help you. And yet our ego gets in there. And it's like, well, I don't want to. And it just carries on from there. We need to obey the authority of the word. He speaks loudest and clearest through the word. That's why we do it. Jesus is it. Look at Luke chapter 6, verse 46. Luke chapter 6, verse 46 says this. This is a little slap down on the people talking to him. Jesus said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and you don't do what I say? Right? We don't like this verse. We don't want to hear this verse. We'll spend 45 minutes explaining why it doesn't apply to me. My friends, why do you call Jesus Lord, Lord, and then ignore everything he tells you to do and not do? Why? Ego. Pride. My friends, I'm sorry, pride leads to destruction. We can do better than that. Have you ever asked your question, why do we focus so much on the Bible? I mean, we have Bible classes for Sunday school. We have Bible now during the worship service. We have Bible during discipleship training. We are reading the Bible together as a group. We are doing Proverbs together as a group. We are memorizing and meditating. What is up with all the focus on this book? 66 chapters, 66 individual books, 2 testaments. The latest part was written 2,000 years ago. Some of it was written 5,000 years ago. Talk about ancient words. Can't we get an updated version? The reason we focus so much in on the Bible is because the Bible is the loudest and clearest words of Jesus. Jesus is in the Old Testament. Jesus is in the New Testament. He is the Word. And when he says to do something, we're supposed to do it. When he says not to do something, we're supposed to not do it. We are not supposed to spend a lot of time justifying doing whatever we want. His commands, his prohibitions, even his principles, we are supposed to be living up to it. If it says to do it, we are supposed to obey. Let us submit to the Word. The problem is you have to know it in order to live it. We have to read it to understand. We have to know it in order to apply it to our lives. And as we apply it to our lives, more is revealed to us so that we can apply more of it to our lives. And all of a sudden we are on a path of spiritual maturity and transformation. The Bible is the love letter, but it's also the big tool of God so that he can guard and protect his children. That's us. To not submit ourselves to the Word. To read something and say, no, thank you. To skip over something because we don't want to talk about it is an act of rebellion. And as an act of rebellion, it is sin, evil, and wickedness. And as we've been reading the Old Testament together, like the book of Numbers that has 3 or 4 rebellions, God does a pretty good job handling rebellions. He's not worried about a rebellion at all. He's active and miraculous against rebellions. He gets her done. So the real question, my friends, the question for the ages, the question for the end of every day that we should really be asking ourselves, that we should ask each other. Believer, are you submitting to God, or are you rebelling against God? What are you doing? Are you the servant, or are you playing boss and biding your time? Most of us are playing boss. You're in the majority if you're playing boss. You are. And God, in his grace and his mercy, lets his spoiled, rebellious child throw the temper tantrum to wear themselves out, and waits for the consequences of our stupidity for us to then realize that we are not good masters of our own lives. We've been trying to drive the car as a 4-year-old. No wonder we got in an accident and found ourselves in a field. Sorry, personal story from long ago. Not quite that bad. Are you submitting to God, or are you rebelling against God, my friends? Answer that.